innocent enough, doesn't it? Lots of young people hitchhike. Seems like a good way to get from one place to another. But sometimes there are dangers involved that never meet the eye. So no matter where you meet a stranger, be careful if they are too friendly. One never knows when the homosexual is about. Let's take the case of Jimmy Barnes. Jimmy played baseball all afternoon, and he didn't feel like walking home, so he decided to thumb a ride. He'd done it 100 times before, and he didn't think anything was unusual when the driver struck up a friendly conversation. In fact, he seemed like a real nice guy. What Jimmy didn't know was that Ralph was sick, a sickness that was not visible like smallpox, but no less dangerous and contagious, a sickness of the mind. You see, Ralph was a homosexual, a person who demands an intimate relationship with members of their own sex. So no matter where you meet a stranger, be careful if they are too friendly, if they try to win your confidence too quickly, and if they become overly personal. One never knows when the homosexual is about. He may appear normal.
Almost from the very start, the Brony fandom attracted, and still continues to attract, a large amount of attention from many sources, including mainstream media. While some of this attention has been negative,
there are worse hobbies for a young lad to have, like, terrorism.
A surprising amount of it, especially in recent months, has been refreshingly positive.
And sure, we know some of you are saying, guys who like My Little Pony? Yeah, they do. And we celebrate people who have enthusiasm and passion for something. Besides, it might be good if there was a little brony in us all.
While the reason for this attention might seem obvious, many skeptics, including some bronies, are critical of what they perceive as excessive hype over nothing more than a TV show that was deceptively good despite originating from a brand associated with cynical corporate marketing. Essentially, the criticism boils down to this. So adults, many of them men, are sincerely enjoying a show aimed at little girls. What's the big deal? The simple answer is that bronies were, and still are, a harbinger of change.
Bronies are changing the definition of masculinity.
A challenge to a status quo that many people never saw coming, and that many others saw as long overdue. At BronyCon in 2012, Lauren Faust, the creator of My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, gave her opinion on the change that bronies were helping to bring about.
The lifetime career goal for me has always been wanting to lift up little girls. I think society kind of has a contempt for girls and little girl things. You know, when athletes are performing badly, their coaches call them ladies, or when somebody's being weak, they say they're crying like a little girl. That's contempt. And when something is when somebody's trying to describe something as stupid or lame, they say it's for little girls, or only a little girl would like that. Or when something is pink or full of rainbows and hearts, people jump to the immediate conclusion that it's dumb. And that if, adult men are liking that sort of thing, there's something wrong with them, because there's something contemptuous and unworthy about girl things and being a girl. And you guys challenge that, and that's why I'm so inspired by bronies.
Media can have an enormous impact on how society judges anything, or anyone. And that media includes kids' cartoons. If you view that statement with skepticism, you would not be the first person to underestimate this power. The following footage is part of an interview of Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhura on the original 1960s Star Trek television series, where she tells the story of how her own view of Star Trek's effect on society was forever altered after an encounter with one of her biggest fans, the most famous Trekkie of all time.
It's a Star Trek fan. He said it's a Star Trek fan. I'm looking for a young man who's a Star Trek fan. I turn, and instead of fan, there's this face the world knows with this beautiful smile on it. And I remember thinking, whoever that fan is going to have to wait, because Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther King, my leader, is walking toward me, not 10 feet away, with a beautiful smile on his face. And then this man says, "Yes, Miss Nichols, I am that fan. I am your best fan, your greatest fan. And my family are your greatest fans. As a matter of fact, this is the only show on television that my wife, Coretta, and I will allow our little children to watch, to stay up and watch, because it's on past their bedtime." And I said, which was all that I was able to say. My mouth just opened and closed. I said, "Dr. King, thank you so much." And then I got the courage to say, "And I really am going to miss my co-stars." And he said, "What do you mean?" Dead serious. And I said, "Well, I'm going to leave Star Trek because I'm going to say have an offer to star in." I never got that far. I said, "Well, I'm leaving Star Trek." He said, "You cannot. You cannot." And I felt like that little boy Willis. "What you talking about, Dr. King?" But you know I didn't say that, no. But I was taken aback, and I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. He said, "Don't you understand what this man has achieved, is achieving or something?" I just looked at him. He said, "For the first time on television, we will be seen as we should be seen every day, as intelligent, quality, beautiful people who can sing, dance, but who can go into space, who can be lawyers, who can be teachers, who can be professors, who are in this day, and yet you don't see it on television until now." I could say nothing. I just stood there, realizing every word that he was saying was the truth. And at that moment, the world tilted for me.
This episode of The Elements of Brony is about stereotypes, and how My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, and its fans of all ages are challenging those stereotypes. Our discussion will be from the perspective of 4 adult members of the Brony fandom, and our stories should hopefully be illuminating and informative. But at the end of our discussion, I hope you'll stick around, because I'd also like to tell the story of 2 others. The stories of 2 people, both named Michael. The first story is an encouraging sign of just how far we've come as a civilization. The second story, however, is a sobering reminder of just how far we still have to go.
Welcome to episode 3 of The Elements of Brony. I'm Neal X. I'll be the moderator of this discussion. Joining me once again are 3 members of the My Little Pony fandom whose unique perspectives should make this discussion interesting and fun. Once again, we have the man, the legend, the thunder from down under, Anthony C. Over to the right, we have Conrad Collins, also known as DigiBrony. And right in the middle, we have, joining us again from Europe, Clover Keene. Hi guys, how are you doing today?
Hello.
All right, so let's get right into this discussion. I'm going to start it off with actually going back again to kind of what we how we started talking about episode 1 and how we all got into the fandom. And I'm going to sort of go back to like when I was still playing Team Fortress 2 and still like learning about this phenomenon that was going on, that there were people liking a new reboot of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. And to tell a little bit, another dimension of that story, which is that one thing I realized really quick, I think I mentioned this, is that even when I had no idea what this was about, like why people were calling themselves in the game like names like Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash in the game, I was like, that's a really effeminate sort of name. And obviously, I mean, it takes a certain amount of guts to want to call yourself something like that in a public place, even if it is on the internet. To want to like identify as something that sounds that effeminate or girly sounding, it takes some courage. And I was wondering what was causing people to do that. And as I learned more about it, I was like, oh, it's My Little Pony, and apparently there's lots of older male fans who are becoming fans of this. There was a part of me that was kind of impressed. That not even on the sense of like, is this a good show or not, or that's interesting. It was just sort of like,
I admire your honesty. Hell, I like you.
There's something about this that feels like it's almost like people are flocking to this almost like it's a rebellion of sorts. Like I felt like there was an undercurrent of like this was sticking it to society in a way. Right. Like it was like people sort of saying, okay, we know what your reactions to this are going to be. Right. And we're saying we're loud and proud about this, and we love this show, and we're going to tell the world. And there was a part of me that was like, you know, I've almost been waiting for this to happen, because I sort of understood what the rebellion was against, that it was against sort of these norms in society that tell us what we can and can't like, and who we can and can't be like, what interests we should have, and that kind of thing. And I've been sort of waiting for this to come. I felt like it was a long time coming. I was really surprised by the actual form this rebellion took. Like it was like I never expected to be about like a My Little Pony cartoon, to be like the rallying point for people to be like, I can like girly things. I am a man. I can be into this kind of stuff.
If I didn't know any better, I would say you watch My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, on a regular basis.
I can call myself Fluttershy and think that's awesome in a first-person shooter video game, and I'm not going to be afraid about calling myself that. And that was one of the reasons why I felt like I wanted to be a part of the Brony fandom. I was like, I almost feel like solidarity with these people. Like,
this is our counterculture rebellion?
Yeah,
this
I felt sympathetic.
Yeah.
There was something that John Delancey said when I first learned about him being part of this fandom, and I was looking at like early interviews of him and comments that he had made about what he was attracted to in this, and I was like, he was almost coming to it from the counterculture thing. He was like, when I was a kid, I was like a hippie. I was into the counterculture thing, and I was like, I see that again here. This is again that thing, that sort of rebellion against our parents' way of doing things, or the old status quo of what's proper for guys or not.
I grew up during the 60s, so I mean, I'm still growing up, but I mean, that's where the rubber hit the road for me in terms of, and you know, we had I was, the kid with the long hair down to here and what have you, and I experienced what everybody felt about that, and I thought that we ushered in, without sounding too corny, the age of Aquarius, and I was happy about that, and I think that you're in your way and ushering in your age Aquarius, so I think that's great.
And he was like, I felt like I wanted to be a part of this out of almost to give these people some solidarity and protection.
Because clearly there's a group of people out there who are willing to brave ridicule over something that they think is important, and I wanted to find out what was important about it.
It wasn't really because I had thought it out. It was more just as a reaction that, these guys or these people need some sort of protection from this. They need to, if nothing else, they need to be able to say who they are rather than have someone identify who they are before they get an opportunity.
That was actually one of the reasons he said he made the documentary about the Bronies, because he was like, these people are going to be vilified, these people are going to be targeted. And as we've seen, Bronies were. I mean, the attacks came, the criticism came.
Bronies, another disturbing trend.
Yes.
Bronies are brothers in ponies. These are grown men who stay home from work and have now started filing for disability like Baby Man because they love My Little Pony so much and they like going to chat rooms and discussing My Little Ponies, like, you know, the subtexts and plots, that now they cannot work because they've become obsessed with My Little Ponies.
Right.
And he was like, I think these people need someone in their corner who's going to stick up for them a little bit, and I want to do that. So I want to ask you guys, what do you think about that? And can you talk a little bit about your personal experiences, maybe, how you thought about the whole older men liking My Little Pony and what you thought of that? So actually, Anthony, I'd like to start with you on that.
Yeah, speak up. Yes, what?
I'd like to start with you on that, if I could, because I think you're an expert on these things.
Because I'm the old creaky one.
All right. Shoot. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, what was when you were first getting into the fandom? Was there any element of that in what you were thinking? Like, this is interesting that older men are into My Little Pony and this is sort of rebellious, or did you feel anything about that?
I don't live in a culture that's really aware of it to a big degree. I mean,
meanwhile, Australia is down there like, WCF, mate.
I think I only just learned that there is actually a con here in this country just the other day. So I'm an isolated, a little island of in myself around here. So I kind of keep it to myself. So, but I love. It's a United States thing. The show's very much an American show, and it feels like. Americans are very accepting of new things in pop culture and so on.
Really, you think so?
I think so. Compared to a lot of other places that I've had any kind of dealing with.
Free ponies for all Americans.
And so it's like it didn't surprise me.
Think you could be like specific? Could you be like specific about that? I mean, anything like you can say that in this culture this was not accepted, and in the U.S. it was, or obviously you're saying it for some reason, right?
Yeah, I guess there's just much more of it. There's America's a very large population, and I can't really give you an off the cuff example of this, but I can certainly say that America's the start. It's the beginning of this. Like we mentioned, Woodstock. That's where Woodstock happened, and it's certainly the place where so many, just about every fad that I can think of outside of Eurovision and the Beatles began is the States. You got the mother of all fandoms, which started the whole con thing. Trekkies began there, and it's like. And every other fandom since gets when I hear that there's this show, which I take a look at this show and I fell in love with it. I just grabbed on it with both hands myself, long before I knew that there was a huge movement of any kind. So I'm like, what is this show? It's great. So when I hear that there are people into it, I'm like, oh, I'm not surprised.
But what about what about on the internet? Like was there anything socially on the internet that you thought was odd, or like any place that you were at that that you were like, wow, people are really open about this here? Or did it just seem like
I mean, you said you played Team Fortress 2 too. I mean, and a lot of our experiences of this is through the internet, right?
I was going to mention Team Fortress 2 is where I found that was most odd. And then you got places, you got whole servers dedicated to it and whatnot. And that was odd. That was odd, but not unwelcome, I guess. I took it well.
She drains everything. Jump it! Buddy, let's just stay here. Hey, dig him up! That was pretty funny, I got to admit.
Okay,
so my jimmies.
So, Chloe, what about you? I mean, you're also not in the U.S., and this is not a U.S. show. I mean, it's a U.S. show, but if you're coming to it on the internet, I sometimes wonder, like, I mean, national boundaries don't matter as much on the internet. I mean, they do matter to some extent, but so I mean, what was your thoughts on that?
I would actually go back a bit in time for that as well, because I think that my childhood did a great deal for me in understanding and not feeling as confused as I would have otherwise. So part of my childhood was spent in Eastern Europe.
Dear sweet Mother of God, we're in Eastern Europe.
And you do have a bit more traditional roles here and role models and the way you're brought up. And I remember as a child, I had lots of Barbies. And my parents were really liberal and forward-thinking. And yet, I have this really clear memory of me desperately wanting an Action Man toy. And I really wanted this Action Man toy, and I remember this inner turmoil of, I cannot tell my parents there is something wrong with me. There is something incredibly bad thing going on in my head. How can I want an Action Man toy when I'm a girl? I need to play with Barbies. And so for me, that was like a huge trauma of getting over, of pounding down this yearning in me for a boy's toy.
Do you like Transformers, for instance?
Oh, Transformers were my childhood.
So you're clearly out of your childhood, right? Because they're definitely marketed to the boys as well. Did you have the same feeling that your little brother has about Transformers?
Yeah, I really did. Same thing with, like, you know, race cars. I loved them when I was little, but it's like they only have boys in the commercials, so apparently there's something wrong with me for wanting to play with them.
And then, you know, jumping ahead 20 years, maybe less, and I see the memes, and then I see that the people who are posting these are men. And first, I mean, my first reaction was what most people's reaction is, that this is ironic. Mm-hmm. These people surely can't like this show, or if they do, they're being ironic about it. Surely they don't dare to be open about it.
Yeah. And
then I realized they were, and I thought, well, thank God. You know, that's pretty cool. I mean, maybe these are boys who were, you know, just like I was when they were children, thinking that there's lots of toys out there, lots of shows they want to watch, just because the humor appeals to them as well. And now they're standing up, they've grown up, and they're saying, actually, you know what? I can like whatever I want. And I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, it's one thing, you know, to talk and harp about freedom, and you can like what you want, and it's another thing to actually, when you're confronted with the choice, to actually do it and not apologize for it, right?
I didn't bring them up here to ridicule them. I brought them up here to illustrate the point of conformity, the difficulty in maintaining your own beliefs in the face of others. Now, those of you, I see the look in your eyes like, I would have walked differently. Well, ask yourselves why you are clapping. And we all have a great need for acceptance. But you must trust that your beliefs are unique, your own, even though others may think them odd or unpopular, even though the herd may go, that's bad.
And when I was new to this, I was realizing the same thing. I was like, these people are doing it. They're you know, walking the walk, and it was like, again, like this sort of sticking it to the man. You know, it was like this and I felt like whatever this subculture was, this counterculture thing was, it was subversive, right? I was subverting a number of things. It wasn't just subverting the gender thing. Like, obviously the gender thing is the most obvious one. But as I sort of thought about it, I was like, there's several things that they're rebelling against here, that we're rebelling against here. And you can tell what it is by the way that it's attacked, right? And so as I was getting into the fandom, as I started learning more and more about it, eventually I came across the criticisms, the haters, the critics, the people, the cultural commentators who were taking notice of this as well and weighing in negatively against it. And one of the articles I read was
this really alarmist piece of on a conservative blog called Breitbart.com. Some of you may know, but I don't know. You're not Americans, so maybe not. But it was by a guy named Kurt Schlichter. He was a conservative blogger, and he wrote this really vitriolic article about this new phenomenon called bronies, and he was basically saying what you might, the whole litany. Like, I like this article because even though it's misinformed and it's extremely mean-spirited, it's also a great little summary of all the criticisms that people have of this. Because it was like, okay, these people are adults watching a kids show. They're like Manchildren. They're immature. They're men watching something for girls, so they're sissies. Literally uses the word sissies, which means like someone who's offensively effeminate. That's what sissy actually means. And then he's like, these people need to get a life. They're nerds. They're uses the word gibos. I've never even heard what that word.
Heard that one.
But you know what it means, right? It's just a word for they're weird nerds who are obsessed and unhealthily obsessed with something, right? God. So you've got those three attacks. You know, you've got men being unmanly, you've got adults being immature, and you've got people being unnaturally obsessed with something that should not be entertaining or interesting. And so I was like, okay, so what are the bronies' answers to those three things, right? What do we respond? How do we respond to? How can we answer this? And people have done a really good job actually in here and there responding to these criticisms. And what I wanted to actually point out about this article before I go to you guys is the hilarious thing about this article is if you go down and read the comments on this conservative blog, which is read by lots of conservative people, a lot of the people who are actually regular readers are actually criticizing him for this. They're like, actually, no, this show is really good. There were people in there who's like, I'm a conservative here, and you've got it wrong, man. Like, this show was actually quite intelligent.
It's a pretty conservative show.
And well, there are people that are, and it's like, this is a good show. There's nothing wrong with people liking this. And there were people who were like, I'm a lawyer, I'm a 50-year-old guy, I'm a journalist, and I like this show, and stuff like that. And then, of course, there are bronies in the comments who have taken it over and who have like plastered it over with like bro hoofs, and they're not criticizing the guy. They're just doing like bro hoofs, and they're like, "Yeah, bronies is awesome," and it's just this love fest happening in the comments, and it's just sort of like, I got this image, of the hippies putting the flowers in the gun.
Yeah,
I mean, it was like it was that, and it was winning, and I was like, man. So, what do you guys think about the attacks on the fandom? What have you seen about that, and how do you think about brony responses to that? So what do you think?
I still get to answer the first question too, because I do have to.
Well, yeah, go into that if you want to as well.
Yeah, because the counterculture thing. God, Anthony, what the hell are you doing? I'm sorry, he's eating cigars and stuff. Anyway,
a real cigar.
I'm not sure.
I don't know how real men respond to all these faceless attacks, but we sissy boys, we generally duck and cover.
You want to know what I think?
Yes.
I think you're some kind of deviated prevert. I think General Ripper found out about your preversion and that you were organizing some kind of mutiny of preverts. Now move!
Actually, the issue at stake is patriotism. You must return to your world and put an end to the commies. All it takes are a few good men.
What? That nonsense is centuries behind us.
Oh, man. So, for me, the position that I was in with My Little Pony definitely had some element of rebellion, but it was sort of a continued rebellion that I'd already been on, because for me, oddly enough, my parents are super liberal, right? They don't care what I'm into. They've never been like, ever criticized me for what I like or anything like that. They've always just kind of let me do my own thing. But as a kid growing up, I had two younger brothers, and all three of us were like simultaneously terrified and hated anything that had to do with girls whatsoever. We didn't talk to any girls. We didn't know anything about girls. We didn't watch any girl shows. We disengaged with anything that had a female presence in it. We were just totally anti-girl growing up. I don't really know why. I don't know what spawned it.
Isn't that just like a boy who can't handle the least bit of sentiment?
And again, even though my parents are super liberal, they did nothing to really curb this. They just let us do our thing, They were always like, you'll get it eventually, you'll like girls, We were like, no, we won't. So growing up, when I hit like 14, of course, then I start liking girls and all. And I was a big anime fan.
Check out some anime, pick up some manga.
and I very spontaneously got into girl shows, like shows about girls, as opposed to like growing up with all guys and violence. And then suddenly I was enjoying shows that are just like girls doing nothing and just sitting around talking and stuff. And I sort of started getting into the anime community via the webcomic Mega Tokyo. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. You don't need to, but one of the interesting things about Mega Tokyo is that it really approached this sort of American side of anime fandom, and the main characters were an anime fan and a guy who was just like a nerd who was more into like American games and stuff. And the anime fan guy always played with a female character in online games, and the other guy would you know, of course, give him crap about it. But that was like so how the anime fandom was. Just guys who were anime fans always would play female characters in online games, whether it be shooters, MMOs, whatever.
If you're new to this series, let me briefly summarize my feelings for Japanese RPGs.
It was really common in the anime fandom. And of course, people would peg anyone who was a guy playing as a girl character would immediately be pegged as an anime fan because they were doing that. But as I got into anime culture, then the people who were in there super embraced the fact that they were enjoying shows about girls. Whether it wasn't necessarily that the shows were girly, because usually they had a male main character and were about a guy pursuing girls or something like that, even still, the characters that everyone knew were the female characters. So on the forums, they had avatars of female characters, they had banners, their names were references to female characters, they played these female characters, so everything was very feminine in their approach. And in my subset of the anime fandom anyway, I was big into, like, I talked to a lot of people who were into, like, lolly stuff, you know, where it's, like, little girl characters and stuff. And so there was a lot of lolly avatars, a lot of lolly names and stuff like that. And so we really sort of, because those people were frowned upon, even within the anime community, that stuff was, like, really harped on.
You know what, dude? Just turn this off now.
No, I don't want to.
This is getting really silly.
No, it's really good. It's really good.
What evidence is there that this is getting any better?
Because look, it's so interesting.
And we, of course, would rebel by pushing it in people's faces as much as possible.
Who said that? Which one of y'all dead motherfuckers just said that shit? Was it you, String Bean? You skinny ass looking motherfucker? Turn around and say it again. Turn around and say it again! Oh! Now you f***ed up!
We'd have these, like, adorable little girl in a pink dress, you know, magical girls, like, you know, posting magical girl opening songs where it's, like, high-pitched singers and auto-tune vocals and stuff, you know. It was all about promoting, like, the girliest possible thing just to be, like, in your face. Like, we obviously don't care about your opinion. This is what we like, you know? And as I got more and more into those sort of girly things, then that's about when My Little Pony came along, was when I was, like, you know, I was really into, like, magical girl shows and stuff. And so for me, it was funny because My Little Pony did not really catch on in the anime community. Yeah. But for me, that was part of... Because I was already known, even within the smaller subsets of the anime community, I was always known as a rebel. People knew me as the guy who was going to be really in your face about whatever I was doing, whatever I was into. So when I got into My Little Pony, it just so happened that my username was Digibro, and so I just put a knee at the end. It was like, I'm Brony now, and I made all my avatars pony stuff, and so all my anime fan friends were like, oh god, he got into ponies, now we're all going to have to deal with this because he's never going to shut up about it. And I didn't, you know, at first I was doing it kind of as a joke, as a rebellion to say, like, hey, this show is good and I don't care what you anime fan people think about it. I'm going to, you know, talk about the fact that I love this show. And then it sort of spiraled out of control because I got really into it.
I mean, there's a couple of things in there that you raised that are interesting. I might come back to later. But actually, so what I'd like you to go on to the question that I asked, which was about what do you think about the attacks or the responses that are negative to the fandom, and how what was the response to that response? Yeah. If you've seen anything of that, or
I mean, I've obviously seen plenty. I get haters even on my own videos who come in and are just calling me autistic and a loser and whatever.
I'd expect you to say that. Pony hater.
And
we'll get to that.
Right. And my policy has always been to just ignore or like put them on a level below me. Like the way I've said, you know, in a sort of joking light sometimes, I've been like, haters aren't people. Like, because that's the way I look at them. I don't treat them like their opinion is meant to be respected, and if they're being, you know, a dick about it, to use a somewhat harsh word. But yeah, I mean, if people are like have criticisms and stuff, if they can't do that in a social, you know, in a good way, basically. If they can't be good people, then forget it, you know? And I don't care what subject that is, whether it's attacking people for anything, you know? If you can't be civil about it, then just stop. You know, just disregard those people. Forget about them, because
there's like ulterior motives behind the people who are doing this, right? Either they're trying to get a rise out of you, or they're sort of like testing you to see like what your reaction is going to be, and they want to judge you based on that reaction.
There's an element of that too, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. There's what are some of the rebuttals to these criticisms? Anthony,
that is the main thing, because the tenets of the show are all love and toleration. Yeah. To love and tolerate. It's just like Brony trolling people. It's trolling the haters. Right. You can't troll My Little Pony, because its thesis is the ultimate rebuttal. So
definitely. I mean, I think the fandom a lot of it doesn't get that. A lot of them do get offended. A lot of them do argue, but there is an undercurrent.
Well,
yeah, I mean, there is a strong undercurrent of people going, guys, all you got to do is love and tolerate and ignore the haters. And,
sure.
You know,
we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the positive like philosophy of the show in later episodes. But I actually want to get into the specific areas of what we're talking about here today. And one is the gender issue, which is like what, like the man versus woman, femininity versus masculinity. Like, what are people supposed to do, and what's right, what's wrong, what are the pros and cons of these concepts? So I actually just want to ask a general question. So, like, what do you guys think about gender equality? What do you guys think about gender issues in general? So, Anthony, can I start with you?
You may. What is it? Yeah. I'm kind of in a unique position to observe something strange about this fandom. And we say that the fandom is divided something like 60-40, I think, like that, 2/3 or something like that. 2/3 is
okay.
2/3 male to female ratio, and the big question is, why all these adult dudes? What's the big deal? And everyone is losing their gourd, and they're astounded at how it could be, and Fox News is having a field day at all the pedophiles, and what is this? And I'm just sitting back feeling astounded that everyone else is astounded. It's crazy. It's the whole thing as a massive movement to me doesn't ring any alarm bells. It's a huge. I mean, I brought up Trek before. Behold, this 40-50-year-old thing that this is only one of the later big fandoms.
Yeah.
It's pretty big, but now where was I going with this? All right, a little while ago, let's see now. I made a cartoon, an Invader Zim animation for a friend, and if you take a look at the statistics. And if you put something on YouTube, you have the ability to check out the statistics of who's watching it. The demographics is what it is, actually.
Yeah.
And of course, all my pony stuff there is all 2/3 male watching this show. And this show, what is it? It's a well presented, well animated, well written, usually show, featuring a strong female focus, strong female cast. And then I checked out the statistics, the demographics of the Invader Zim fandom. The Invader Zim fandom, which beginning of the century, right, and petered out thanks to largely its parent company hating it to bits, hating it so much. Nickelodeon hated Invader Zim's, and they actually tried to kill it since it originally aired before, like a couple of years before YouTube. So even after they killed it, then they've been systematically continuing to kill it on YouTube. So it never had the support to get as big as it is now. But you bronies, the Brony hood, you think you know what a fandom is? You think you know? This thing won't die. Invader Zim would have had was in the position to grow just as big. I believe it was just as big. As I look at the people to this day begging for more, and Nickelodeon will never let it happen. They can't stand John Vasquez, and it's just never going to. Sorry, but it died 10 years ago, something like that.
This horrible show ended 10 years ago. Let it go. Let it go.
Taking a look back to those demographics of who's watching it. It's almost a diametric opposite of the male-orientated My Little Pony fandom. It's 60-40, or 2/3, I should say.
Female to male.
Female fans of Invader Zim.
Okay.
Who are not at all shy about telling me, at least, why they love this rather well-animated, well-presented, well-written show with a strong male focus and male protagonists. And that is that they're all in love with Zim. They're in love with Zim, they're in love with Dib, they're in love with Gur, the little robot. They love the guys. They're in love with them, in fact. They want to marry them. And it's just, oh gosh.
But I watched some video of the crew, the voice actors, reading through one of the opening scripts. And all you could hear during this episode were girls going, so it really, I mean, I knew this before, but it really just sort of put a spotlight on how so many of the fans are watching the show wrong.
So guys, why do you love My Little Pony?
Yeah.
Well, you're in love with the characters. They're
something...
strong female characters, and you just absolutely. And so it's just a shame that
One thing I used to tell myself, Anthony, like if I could just interject, one thing I used to tell myself is like, this is not weird at all. Like when I was watching it, I was like, this is I've seen this since I was a little kid. It's like, guys might not like girly things, but they sure as hell like girls.
Right.
That's what I used to tell myself.
I love little girls, they make me feel so good.
Just going on that train of thought, I have to get into the anime fandom, and especially the trend of the last couple of years.
Whoa! Check out all the dealers at No Brand Con this year. You can pick up whatever kind of manga, anime you want.
Because of the fact that in animation, anime was taking a trend towards what was called moe, which is basically cute girls, right?
The moe genre is something I've always had a natural fear for when it comes to anime. There's just something about cute girls who look about 12 doing cute things with eyes that cover half their face that make me want to leg it a mile before I inevitably hear the exasperated sound that is apparently the only response a group of cute girls can make to just about every sentence ever.
And basically every show that was coming out was just nothing but cute girls, like overrunning the shows. And a lot of older anime fans were complaining about it because they missed the old days when it was manly men, destroying stuff. But now it was all
Fist
cute
of the
girls.
North Star.
Yeah, Fist of the North Star is definitely an old anime fan thing that people used to complain. Oh, why can't we have more Fist of the North Star instead of all this chaos?
Which is just as over-the-top manly as the new stuff is over-the-top girly.
Right, but the thing is,
it's just the other
in the last few years, what happened was there emerged a much larger female anime fan base, both in Japan and America, all around shows that are all about guys. It became a complete flip. Now, there were already shows that were like reverse harems, where it was, a girl character and a fleet of guys that she's trying to chase that were basically the inverse of what anime was doing with the shows with all girl characters. But they were a lot fewer and a lot less audience. But then what happened, it started around the time of this show, Do Da Da Da, which is just, I mean, it's not like aimed at women or anything. It's not like guy or girl centric, but it happened to have a lot of very attractive male characters in it. And it was sort of, you know, gender neutral, had a lot of attractive male characters. Girls started shipping them like crazy, and then like the fan art exploded, and it got a huge fandom, based almost entirely female fandom. Even though like the plot is like a Guy Ritchie film, you know.
Yeah. The one I've stumbled across recently is Hetalia.
Yeah, Hetalia came right around the same time as Do Da Da Da.
やっぱりな、今の時代馬だけじゃいかんと思って。お、来たし。よしよし。で、ポニー飼い始めたんよ。どうよこれ、マジ可愛いと思わ。
Yeah, both of those got really big on their all-male casts, and then it spawned this whole movement towards like all these male-centric shows. Lots of them are boys' love. Lots of them are just gender-neutral shows that appeal to both. Tiger and Bunny, which came out a couple years ago, was a big one that, even though it was a superhero show and men enjoyed it, it had an overwhelmingly female fan base just because of the character designs. And now a lot of the major anime studios have started making way more girl-centric shows. Kyoto Animation, which has been one of the biggest studios in the past like almost 10 years, was they mostly did girls shows. They did like The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, Lucky Star, K-On!, all these like giant shows about girls, which actually got pretty big female fan bases in Japan as well, as well as the male ones.
With this for good. Oh my boy, if you don't make a choice in the end, I don't know how you'll cope when they feed you all their life.
But now they're doing a show called Free, which is about all men, and it's a swimming show, and it's like all these gratuitous like taking shirts off to go swimming, and all the guys are like super ripped and beautiful, and they literally just like flipped genders, and that's like the studio that was best known for doing these girl shows.
Now, this is really interesting.
You know, doing guy ones.
This is going to be something we'll just talk about later in this episode, but I like to go to you, Chloe. I like to ask the same question, which is like, generally, what do you think about the gender issue and entertainment, and where your personal angle is on that?
I think partly, at some point, the entertainment industry did get it right on a very basic level. Girls tend to be a bit more interested in emotional stuff and conversations and personalities and problems focused around that. And I think guys would gravitate towards action more. I don't think the problem's there. This kind of stereotype on a very basic level exists. I think the problem is the weight that entertainment industry has attributed to these. And I think they made a huge mistake in they just thought that that's as much as counts. As long as you've got a show, you know, you want to make a show for girls, okay, gossip, boys, clothes, you know, personal, emotional stuff. You've got a show for guys. Okay, action. It's
guns,
all fighting
explosions.
and everything. And of course, that's, you know, that's the easy thing to do, and that's what you get if you don't really research your target audience, or just exactly even if you don't just want to have a target audience, but if you want to appeal to a wider audience. What I think MLP did amazingly is they thought, okay, you know, girls, conversations, you know, like emotional problems, right? That's going to be an aspect of it. And then life's about a lot of other things as well. And it's not true that girls don't like action. We do like it. We just, the reason we don't watch action movies is because that's all there is to them.
Right.
And I think that's the same reasons a lot of guys can get bored of action movies.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the
if I can say
point of this.
Like Fist of the North Star was just an example I used of like this ultra male sort of ultra masculine entertainment, or even the ultra female entertainment. I mean, the reason I like Fist of the North Star is purely ironic. Let me be clear about that.
It's atrocious.
Like, it's atrocious.
It's a bad show because all it is every episode, this super ripped guy goes to some town
out of his clothes
and blows up a bunch of people with his fists. The rest of it's like nothing. It's just boring. Everyone's stone-faced. And they just punch each other until they blow up. It's like you can watch a death reel of it, and it's pretty much the same effect.
It's utterly stupid, and that's why it's funny.
Yeah, like Clover said, though, it's not that the stereotypes are completely wrong. It's just that they've been over-enforced. It's like, it's okay that there are some guys who just want an action show like Fist of the North Star, but the homogenization of the media would make it so guys have to watch Fist of the North Star and girls have to watch, what's a good girls' older anime?
Sailor Moon? I don't know.
That's not old enough. It's got to be 80s.
Beyond my
Rose of
knowledge.
Versailles, why not? Let's just go with that. So, yeah, it's like, it's got to be this very divisive split, but like Clover said, you know, some guys are like, I mean, I love action. Most of the movies that I watch or that I love are ones that nobody would be surprised that a guy likes, but I also don't want to see Fast and the Furious, you know, like I'm not that into the masculine stuff,
Yeah, it's sort of like, and there's been change, you know, I mean, society's been changing enormously, like on the gender issue and in any number of ways over the last, you know, in recent history and last 50 years, last 10 years, things are really progressing really fast. I mean, a lot of things have changed, and the entertainment industry is changing too. I mean, in the 70s, 80s, you had lots of more stereotypical shows that enforced these sort of outdated gender stereotypes more. You'll never see a show like, well, I don't want to say never, but like Fist of the North Star is like an artifact of the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, and you know what else is an artifact of the 80s? The earlier generations of My Little Pony.
Right.
Right.
The ones that are just about being
and you can
a
see
girl
you can
show.
see the difference there, where they just concentrated on the sugary stuff, and that just wasn't. I don't think that was even good enough for the target audience, because I think other media must have been, you know, later on emerged that was starting to realize this, that's not all girls would want. And another interesting part is that all girls shows, and yeah, early My Little Pony is a very good example of that. Guys, zero humor.
Yeah.
So this is like a huge distinction that you have with shows that guys willingly watch, and girls willingly watch, or what the entertainment industry would think that girls would willingly watch, is that girls do not need the humor as much as the guy shows does. And I think what they did in MLP is they said, well, actually, we're going
Who
to...
says?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to put a lot of different types of humor here.
Yeah.
That's going to be accessible on very different levels. That's going to be accessible for girls, for boys, for little girls, little boys, and grown people. And I think that's one way in which MLP managed to unite the genders and managed to sideline the whole age thing as relevant. Is just a very, very good amount of and examples of humor.
Oh no! I seem to have got my hoof caught in between two rocks. I cannot run away. I am a damsel in distress. Help me, Spike!
Good morning, Applejack. You ready for breakfast? No pony breaks a pinky promise!
there's a lot of layers to it, and there's a lot of density to it, and there's a lot of universality to the show, that it appeals to young, old, male, female. If we could transition into that sort of not just the masculine versus feminine conflict, but like also the old versus young, what's for kids and what's for adults, and what's okay to watch and enjoy as an adult or as a kid. I was never someone who had any problem with liking something that was meant for kids as an adult. I mean, as long as it was made intelligently or there was some meaning to it that was meaningful. But it was sort of like, to take G3 or the early generations of Pony as an example, like that's the sort of example of a show that, an adult can't watch. Like, adult cannot get anything out of that show whatsoever. It's not visually appealing, it's not thematically appealing, there's no humor, like you said.
Oh my god, that unicorn looks glued on!
Oh god.
Oh
god. Their legs don't bend the right way.
Her back legs don't even bend at all.
Oh god.
This is horrid.
Didn't she already cross that bridge?
And the characters are all the same. Like, there's no differentiation.
They're really desperate to be girly now.
Yes, I am excited.
It just has no, like you said in episode 1, Digi, like verisimilitude. Yeah. Like, it just seems like this really fake storefront thing. It's fake.
It's a fake.
And there's even something more to it that I felt like.
Manufactured is a good word.
Yeah, yeah. It's artificial, and I commented in episode 1, and Anthony, I think you've made similar comments too as well, that G3 and like the earlier generations of Pony aren't just not good or not entertaining for adults. They're bad shows in the sense that you shouldn't watch them. There's a pernicious quality to them that almost...
As a socially conscious individual, you should not partake.
Yeah, it's almost like that when you watch those shows, I've watched bits of them. I never grew up watching them, but I've watched bits of them now just to see how bad they were, and it's almost like they're talking down to the audience.
You're almost through with this hunt. You'll find Sweetie Belle at the opposite of front. Well, that makes absolutely no sense.
They're equating girliness with being shallow.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you, Chloe. Do you think that the original series of My Little Pony, the first few, do you find them sexist in that? It's like, this is what a girl will understand. This is what girls will like.
I haven't rewatched them, to be honest. And I think all that I ever watched.
Have you seen a bad kids show that's designed for girls that in something
but yeah,
similar?
I mean, I was, of course, you do get a bit. I think the way it's different when you're a girl and when you're an adult, when you're a little girl and when you're an adult. Because I think when you're a little girl, my reaction was what I already said, is that it's not that I got offended, is that I wasn't entertained. And I would gravitate towards a boys' show, which would be a problem if I'm trying to fit in, and I'm trying to be a little girl here, and I'm not trying to be a tomboy like I'm supposed to.
Do you know why you gravitated to the boys stuff? Could it be because there was more conflict in boys shows?
I think it's because I got a bit of an action fix from that. But there was usually, I mean, it was
excitement.
I tried to mix it up in my viewing, because of course the boys stuff would get a bit boring because there would be a bit too much action, and then the girls stuff was terribly boring because it was all just about boys. And
I'd hate to cut you off, but to bring up this conflict that I think Faust herself mentioned, is that in the sort of like marketing and media, there's a theory basically, and it's been true up till now. But the idea is that women will watch a guy's show because it's good, but guys won't watch a girl's show because it's good. So, like, whereas you can, like, have, like, guys will watch a bad guy's show, girls will watch a bad girl's show, but girls will also watch a good guy's show, whereas guys would not watch a good girl's show. This was the theory that was pervading.
Well,
so
I would say, is there such a thing as a good girls show that is strictly
right,
girls?
That's the thing. No, there was no example, but that was the assumption everyone made, was that guys...
That's not true.
Yeah,
apparently it's not true.
the assumption was that because and it's sort of this like
because who's to say what's good? Who's judging this thing? Out of which shows?
Yeah,
it should
be noted that until very recently, the entertainment industry is of course male dominated.
This is Maya. Is that right, Maya?
Yes, Maya.
Which Maya?
Kaiser?
Maya Kaiser.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. What is the male to female ratio here? I've walked around. The ratio I think is 800 to 1. I just wanted you to
like the people making these shows, the people writing these shows.
Yeah,
who are
and
they?
that's the thing is that it was
They're
assumed
men.
that it's
For the
assumed that
original
like the assumption is that men hold themselves above women to some extent, where the idea is that women would watch a men's entertainment because they were like looking up to men, whereas men would look down on women's entertainment because it's women's, because woman is weakness and...
I don't want any of that girly frilly frou-frou nonsense.
Rainbow Dash is a Pegasus pony from Equestria, the magical land of ponies.
Because we can be easily entertained.
Yeah.
Really? Well, it's something that Lauren
Well,
Faust said.
no, that's what I mean. That's the argument.
Yeah, that's the theory.
Easily entertaining,
And
you know, it's enough.
Lauren Faust said, Lauren Faust said that when she was a little girl watching My Little Pony, that's what she felt. Like she felt she didn't like the pony show. She played with the toys. She played with the toys, but she used her own imagination to entertain herself.
Remember, the entire point of the G4 incarnation of the My Little Pony show from a creative angle since its inception was subversion. Lord wanted to create a show that rose above the tropes of its peers and create something with substance. And most of the show does this at every turn, from its characterization to conflict presentations and resolutions.
That's exactly what Lindsay Ellis, the nostalgic chick, says. That if she actually did a video on classic.
I think
My
that's
Little
where
Pony.
I got that actual argument from. Is from the nostalgia chick.
What the franchise did was basically take a small horse, which is a pretty benevolent beast on a good day, and morph it into this alien creature with soft, rounded corners, pastel colors, and eyes that are big enough to swallow its head.
But here's the other thing with Transformers as the male alternative. You know how with Transformers you can like actually remember a character or two with like traits that you can actually attribute? Maybe even a conflict? Can you do that with My Little Ponies?
Was it the good ponies versus the bad ponies? What did they all do in Pony Valley? Besides get catty, shallow fights, and, I don't know, walk around, defecate, things ponies do.
See, to me, that's the defining characteristic of the ponies from Hasbro. Nobody gives a shit about the ponies as characters. We all just made up our own, and we had fun with that.
It's very true. I mean, I think that if you watch the older generations of Pony, it's just not very good. It's just not interestingly written. It's not written with any kind of sense that the audience has intelligence or is curious about things. It's just sort of, here, this is the kind of thing you like, right? You like ponies, right? Here you go.
It's just that the script is just this hodgepodge mess of lady parts, essentially.
You can't just have Supergirl solve crimes and save people. Like, she has to fight for a man, right?
No one would believe that a woman could do all
The
this.
thought never even crossed their mind that it would be otherwise.
Exactly.
And it's not any sort of agenda, any sort of mean spirit. It's just like, of course she wants a man. Everybody wants a man.
It's innocent in the way that your grandparents accidentally slipping racial slurs is innocent. That's what this movie is.
Oh, God.
They don't know any better.
She's in the woods. She's got to frolic with bunnies.
She's flying. She needs to fly by some ponies. I know girls love ponies.
It's not that different from whatever the boys' show equivalent was at the time. Where if you watch Transformers is awful.
Kind of like that. Yeah.
It's really awful. But like
some of the early ones.
The original Transformers is really awful. But go along the Transformers timeline and you eventually get your Beast Wars, which is like much more intelligent and interesting.
But just to be on the safe side, I believe we'll give the Maximal something else to worry about. Yes.
But you don't get that with a girls' show. There is no girls' show Beast Wars for the 90s, you know? Yeah. So girls' shows just kind of, I mean, you know, you have, like, My Little Pony and Transformers G1 came out around the same time. Both of them are awful. But then you get Beast Wars comes out around the same time as My Little Pony G1.5, My Little Pony Tales, which is horrible, while Beast Wars is kind of awesome. So that's where the divergence happens,
Kind of awesome.
where girls' shows kept being bad and boys' shows started to have some better variants. And yeah, that was what made Faust angry. Was she was like, why are there no good girls' shows? This is making me mad. That because they're just saying, well, guys aren't gonna watch a good girls' show, so why bother? Just do what girls will watch, you know.
Yeah.
But
So
is it because
they
the
proved
guy
it wrong?
Just let me like girl shows! My Little Pony, My Little Pony, la 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 la.
This is a pony, a baby horse girl toy. Why is it so awesome?
Is it because that guy shows have conflict? They have action, and that's a boys' thing apparently. And that in order to have action, you need conflict.
The girl shows have a conflict as well. It's just a very shallow type of conflict, and
It's
it's
not
usually
a real world
it centers
sort of
around fashion or other girls being mean or boys. This whole weight on love and romance, which is just overexploited, and as a girl, it's just like fed to you.
I have a crush on every boy!
Arrowed!
Ow, my skin!
Yeah, and it's about realism. It's about that sort of sense of conflict, like real world problems that real characters and real people would have. That's what you can relate to. It doesn't matter whether the character is female or male on screen.
Yeah,
or whether,
schizophrenia. Exactly. It's like the difference between Pinkie Pie dealing with paranoid schizophrenia and hypothetical
Oh my God,
G2.
my dress!
Hypothetical G3 Pinkie Pie going like, I can't pick out which flower I want to eat today.
How I adore painting my nails! Ugh.
Actual episode that I did see that was like, oh, we need to find one of our friends. She's leaving us clues as to where she is, and the clues are these cutesy things, and they're like,
Did you find a clue? Yeah! I stay real cool all right, even though I run all night. Oh, that's real easy. Not. What stays cool and runs all night? I know where it is! Follow me! It's not in here. So where's the next clue? There's only one thing in this room that stays cool and runs all the time, meaning it never shuts off. The refrigerator!
Stop thinking, brain. You're going to hurt yourself.
oh yeah, it's just inane, and it
inane
has
conflict.
no relation to the real world. It's just this fantasy world where nothing matters and nothing is interesting, and there's no real problems or anything like that.
I think one of a very interesting thing, if you have a look at shows for girls, but this also goes for theater, and this was a, this is a personal memory of mine, that when I was thinking about applying to acting school, and if you look at girls' shows, it's usually about girliness. It's very self-focused,
right?
And it's never about like the issues.
Things in general, like divorced from.
And even when I went and applied to this theater school, and I picked all these monologues that were for men. They were male, and I applied, and I was there in the audition, and the guy auditioning me looked at me as if I was some sort of disgusting little object. And looked at me and said, "What is this? Why do I only have monologues from men?" And I said, well, because I don't just, all the monologues for girls are just about being a girl, being a woman, or wanting to be with a man because I'm a woman and needing a man. And I don't want to talk about, I want to talk about to be or not to be. And of course I was out of the audition immediately. And I think
that's a depressing story.
Wow. Yeah.
This is a terrible story. I never tried with acting again.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
But I think that goes very well for shows as well. That is just about you being a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what we're all about.
Oh, there's so much.
That's not what we're thinking about.
You can go into such a long.
I go to work like being a girl. I'm a girl now in front of my computer.
If this movie emphasizes anything, it's the fact that she's a girl, and she's more interested in frolicking with the bunnies. And,
Hey, who isn't?
and I can socialize with people.
Yeah.
These are the things she cares about. She doesn't care about finding the magic orb to save her people. She doesn't care about doing anything productive. She cares about being a girl.
You can go into such a long list of how like this is enforced in society and where you can find this. You know, I saw an article by a mom who was like, this was related to what we're doing. Like she wrote an article about animation and how she thinks that watching good animated shows that show positive female role models can bring up like girls who are really not chained down by gender stereotypes.
Right. Yeah.
And she talks about how like she gets annoyed like. She's trying to raise her daughters so open-minded and not to feel like they're different or that they haven't like some extra burden because they're girls and that they can do whatever they want.
Miyazaki,
yes, that article.
Film, right?
Yeah.
Totoro. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's
those
saying
are great examples. Yeah.
I hate it when my daughter says or when someone says, "Oh, I can be an astronaut too."
Right.
I'm a girl. Like because I mean it's the "to" part that's wrong.
Yeah.
You know, you just want to say you can be an astronaut. Period. You know, it's not about I can do what the guys can do. It's just I can do what I want to do as a human being.
Right.
There was a period of time where I thought I was almost getting indignant about the fact that both Maureen and I had done fencing, I've done stage combat, karate, aikido, all sorts of things like that. And whenever there was anything to do that was action-oriented, it was always the male characters who were getting it. And if there was a fight or something, Beverly was supposed to like take a frying pan over someone's head. And I thought, this is ridiculous. The female astronauts now know how to do everything that the male astronauts know how to do. And that's the way it needs to be, because if something happens to somebody up there, you have to be able to take over in a flash any of those positions. So it seemed ludicrous for a while that the women seemed to only have this nurturing thing.
And that's kind of what the Brony fandom is about at the end, I think. We're transcending the whole question, in a sense. We're just saying, okay, we just like the show because it's good and we like it.
I don't choose to watch it. I don't like, oh, let's go in the living room, let's go watch some My Little Pony. Emma's like that. Emma's like, I want to watch My Little Pony. I'm like, okay, fine, then you can choose whatever you want. And then she chooses My Little Pony. And then I just watch it because it's cute and it's about little ponies. What's more to love about it? So when it's on, I watch it. But I never choose to watch it. Well, when it's on, I do, but you know what I mean.
We don't even really stop to think about it after a while, that it's like, it's a girl show, and I don't. When I watch the show
because
now,
it doesn't
I don't
think about itself that way.
Yeah, the show itself doesn't think about or present itself as that way. It's just characters, you know, in its sort of realistic
it does. I think it does
just happen to be
extent.
female.
Yeah, they just happen to be female. But
I mean, I think there is some extent to which it does think of itself as female, because I do think the show sets out to be a good girls' show.
Sure.
You know, I mean, like Lauren Faust herself has said that she wanted it to be a show that little girls could be proud of and enjoy.
And Anthony, you pointed to this, Anthony, when you were your first impression of the show were like, this is all wrong. Like all the male characters are in bondage.
Yeah.
You know, like when you noted that, I don't think that's actually an accident. You know who else noticed that? In an interview at on a panel at Everfree Northwest, a Brony convention in the U.S., William Anderson.
Some of the showrunners noticed it.
Yeah, William Anderson, who does the score for the music, he commented, he's like, when I was scoring the episodes, I noticed that all the guys are like morons.
Yeah.
But I will say about 13 in, I was like, I called my music editor over and I said, you know what? How come all the guys are like, you know, I mean, let's look. We've got everybody was just so like, they're morons. They were all they were all just like,
nope.
You know, dopes. And I started.
Well, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I started,
no, I'm seriously. I can barely understand you.
I was like, somebody doesn't like guys, you know?
And then, like, Shining Armor was, like, the first straight male character that appeared in the, like, straight-up male character that appeared in
that show, interestingly enough.
He's a surfer.
Sorry I wicked bailed on you, Twi. I've been too busy shredding waves and eating corn dogs.
Are you all familiar with the Bechdel test?
I was just going to say that!
Yeah.
My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, fails the reversed Bechdel test. There is no scene where two male characters have any conversation that's not about women. or any conversation. I don't think even Spike and Shining Armor have talked together. So
maybe
there has never been, those two at best, and maybe one or two lines of dialogue together. You know, most of their dialogue was about Trixie in the first episode they showed up in. So yeah, the show completely fails to reverse spectacle test. But it's not trying to pass that. It's not trying to be not necessarily trying to be a gender equal representation show. It's trying to be a good girls show, you know.
And if one thing you have to point out, when I heard Will Anderson say that, and when I heard you say that, and I've thought it myself, then I stopped myself because I was like, well, haven't I seen that before with the reverse, where there's a guy show and there's a bunch of guy characters and only like a couple of token female characters, and they never say anything, and I take that for granted.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't stop and say, oh, this is wrong.
Stay.
Why?
And stay.
And
see.
And you know, I've seen a lot of people who complain about this argument has happened in argument's happened in full 3 times in my embracing girliness video that I did, which is about the idea that we shouldn't criticize My Little Pony for being girly because it's supposed to be girly. This was extremely important to Lauren Faust. She did not want My Little Pony to be good in spite of its girliness. She wanted to embrace girliness as something that could be good and that deserved respect. She wanted to show intelligent, interesting characters who still wanted to have slumber parties and wear cute dresses and maybe even feel lucky when they became a goddamn princess. You know, and a lot of people are like, oh, I like it even though it's a girls' show. And it's like, no, you like it because it's, you know, because it's good and it is a girls' show. You know, the fact that it's a girls' show is not a problem.
As the youngest and only male character of the main cast, he's the most obvious choice to be the one who's into comic book superheroes. Which, of course, annoys Twilight, because Equestria is a feminist dystopia where everything boys like is bad. Typical Twilight.
Something we sort of brought up, which is the kids versus adults thing. I wanted to ask about, when we think about it as a kids' show, to me, that's almost the bigger objection to answer. When people object to the fact that you're adults watching this this thing aimed at like an under 10 audience or like an under 12 audience, and if you watch the actual episodes, for the most part, it is very simple fare in terms of like plot complexity and for an adult, you know, I don't think I'm alone here when I say that like plots are often extremely predictable.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, it's like season 1, especially season 2. You know exactly what's going to happen. You know what the conflict is and how it's.
So for the record, I never see any of the twists coming.
Okay.
When people are like, "Oh, I saw it coming a mile away," like, but that's just me in general. I never am like ready for whatever it's gonna.
I mean, I can see a lot of things coming, but it doesn't bother me. Like, I'll be clear about that. But
What in the name of one-dimensional characters and predictable reactions is going on here?
Hi, Twilight. You're just in time to see me film my public access TV show. It's about acceptance and tolerance.
Acceptance and tolerance? Why, that's a breeding ground for homosexuality. Millions of kids watch My Little Ponies. If you put this on, it will turn them all gayer than a magician. Oh my God!
In a kids show, you don't have profanity, you don't have violence, you don't have sex, you don't have sexualization.
Yeah.
And in this case, there's literally no romance at all.
Yeah.
And the fourth thing I would say, I guess, you have sort of simple storylines.
Yeah.
Maybe that aren't too complex thematically. So, Chloe, I mean, you've made a video about that. So, can you talk a little bit?
I've made a video about romance or the lack of in MLP, and I think the whole issue of watching a kids show as an adult, for me, that's the core of the struggle that I personally have with the show, or why I don't really tell people that I watch it. Not even really my friends, because it's very difficult to explain.
I missed the Dark Bunny yesterday because my baby cousin had to watch the Love Ducks. Blah!
That is the babiest baby show of all. The Love Ducks make Mary Moo Cow sound like a college professor.
No, they're kind of fun. The colors are really cool, and the music is weird, and it makes you feel happy.
You watch the Love Ducks?
I have a baby sister. Yeah, so I've seen it once or twice because I have a baby sister.
Wow. I thought you were saying you watched the Love Ducks.
I think when it comes to the distinction between adult and children's, we've come a long way. We really have. But animation in itself, as the medium, is still seen as something for kids. I'm not quite sure why that is, and I think there's still, you know, we have come a very, very long way, and this might be different in this part of Europe. But I think when you say, I'm a fan of a show, people are like, oh yeah, you know, CSI, Dexter, and you're like, oh, it's this animation.
Awkward.
You know, it's like, it's kind of, it puts you on a level where, exactly, because it's supposed to be more simple, because the twist is not supposed to be that complex, and because romance and sexualization, as you very well pointed out, is omitted, and because for some reason, in adult show, if you take away the violence, if you take away the sex,
you get a kids show.
You get a kids show.
Right.
So I think that's the most
West Wing.
And I don't know why it shouldn't be okay to want to. I think it's because you can't handle it. You know, you need something to be dumbed down because you can't.
Yeah, it sounds like
you're just not there.
Mommy, wow! I'm a big kid now.
Like it's something about like playing with safety scissors. It's like you're not using the big boy toys. You're not using the
exactly.
Like why do you not want to graduate? You don't want to graduate to
if
the
I
real
can get in on this because it's gonna drive me nuts.
All right.
I think it's just sheer pretentiousness on the side of adults.
You know what I've heard, Popo? Trying too hard to act grown up is a sign of immaturity.
I think that the kind of people who really perpetuate the stereotype are the people who started saying this stuff when they were like 13.
Flanks!
Because
no, there's a 13-year-old boy element to a lot of the believing in the world.
Oh, that is so gay.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, because the way I grew up, I mean, again, I was super rebellious my whole life, right? I mean, like, I sort of always saw myself as better than other people. I'm going to admit that, like, as a kid, because my parents told me I was a genius all the time growing up, and so I believed it. And so,
your beard was better than everyone else's.
You know, well, I did have super long hair growing up. Like, as a little kid, I had really long hair. Everyone made fun of me and said I was everyone made fun of me and said I looked like a girl and stuff like that. I mean, I got picked on a lot, but I never saw it. I never saw it as a problem with myself. I saw it as a problem with everyone else, that they weren't as good as me. You know, that's the way I dealt with those sort of issues.
Nope, I'm still awesome. They're wrong.
So
I
growing
wish I
up,
had that defense when I was growing up.
Growing up, I was super into cartoons, and I was like, you know, people would tell me, oh, you're going to grow out of it, oh, you're not going to like toys anymore when you get to be a certain age, and I was like really determined that this was not going to be the case. I was like, there will never come a day when I'm not into cartoons and toys and video games and the things I like, because to me, it was insulting to suggest that just because I grew up, I was magically not going to care about this stuff anymore.
Kevin, is that correct? I want to ask you quickly about your professional wrestling figures. What's that all about?
Basically, my folks just wanted them to get out of the house. Big John Studd?
Yes.
King Kong Bundy?
Yes.
And I was like, I'll take these. I know exactly where they'll fit in great.
Were they worried that you have a vast collection of men without shirts?
But that's the way that the other kids acted as we got into, like, you know, I mean, I was like 9 and I was into Pokemon like a year after it was cool, and people were making fun of me for being into Pokemon. They're like, oh, that's a kids show. And I'm like, we're kids, you know. And when I was when I was like 13, I was into anime, and people were telling me, oh, cartoons are kids shows, and I was like, why?
I'll let you finish. I'll let you finish, but I've got to interrupt here because, like, I've seen comments recently on on internet forums and places when I'm doing like looking into this project or just interested in this topic, I see comments from people on Reddit like Bronies who are like, well, my little sisters, my little siblings, little kids I know, they're all into like the adult shows. Their favorite shows are like The Wire and Game of Thrones.
Really? Wait,
wait,
there's a little kid who's into The Wire? I want to meet this kid.
Little kids want to grow up, right?
I'm a big pony.
Little kids want to grow up, right?
For the record, whatever kid is into The Wire, that kid is awesome. I want to hang out with that kid.
Yabba dabba dabba do.
Huh?
You get what I'm getting at, though. Like kids want to be adults as fast as possible.
I mean, being a child was being a creature without power, without pocket money, without escape routes of any kind. So I didn't want to be a child. I remember how much, when I was a small boy, I was taking to see a version of Peter Pan. I detested it. I mean, the sentimental idea that anybody would want to remain a boy. I couldn't have thought it out then, but I did later, certainly, that this was a conceit that could only occur in the mind of a very sentimental writer, that any child would want to remain in childhood. It's not possible. The wish is to get out.
And then I'd say there's a subset of adults who are like, well, being a kid, there's some things about it that I definitely don't miss, but the things I liked as a kid, I still like, and I still like for much the same reasons. Those reasons haven't changed.
Yeah,
there's ideas in those things I like. They're entertaining to me, and what's wrong with still liking those things?
Yeah.
Let's tell the truth. Let's talk about the kid who doesn't make it sensationally well, who struggles and fights, but really doesn't know what he's fighting against or for. And I don't think that changes. We're all adults in this room sitting talking about, has that ended? No, it doesn't end. I still think the same way I thought as a child. I still worry. I'm still frightened. Everything is the same. Nothing changes.
I think we're in a culture that's starting to accept it more just because of the internet. Mind, I don't know how bad the generational gap is between me and the rest of you, because I'm only 21 and you guys are in your mid-20s. And also the fact that, I'm very much, very in this internet age that's going on right now, where I grew up on the internet.
When you were talking about your social when you were talking about your social blackout, I was like, and then you described what it was. I was like, that's how I always am.
Right, exactly. For those who don't know, in the listening, the social blackout is that I stopped using Twitter, Tumblr, and Skype for like 2 days. But for me, it was like incredibly being like cut off, but
for me that's like okay.
so I'm totally in this internet age, and for me, when I was in high school, because ironically, even though when I was in middle school everyone made fun of me for still being into cartoons, once I was in high school suddenly everyone was nostalgic and loved all the old shows. People, oh, you used to watch SpongeBob? That's so cool.
There is that moment when people start to have like this retro affection for stuff.
Right.
And you're like, I've been there this whole time. You guys are slow.
Exactly. That's exactly, because I used to get really mad at people, because even though they'd be like, oh man, I love Pokemon, I'm like, you are the same people who were making fun of me for still being into Pokemon when I was 9, and now suddenly you think it's cool again,
In high school and college, I got teased for loving Pokemon. And I have to prophesize that in my adulthood, I'm going to be teased for loving Fluttershy, Rainbow Dash, Derpy Hooves. I'm going to be teased for loving My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. Because I have to admit, I am now officially a 110% full-on Brony.
But like, I mean, I also went to a really liberal slanted school. We had like a lot of nerds and goths at my school, to the point that it wasn't like the nerds and goths were like a lower social thing. That's just what we call them, but they were on the same, social level as everyone else. There was no like, oh, the jocks are the cool kids, we were just anybody. So there was a lot of nerds, a lot of long-haired guys. Of course, by the time I was in high school, everyone's copying my style, basically. When I was in community college, people always talk about cartoons. On the internet, you go on Tumblr, it's nothing but people reblogging their childhood favorite shows. And I think we've just gotten much more into, like, my generation is probably never going to have a problem with cartoons, The generation above me is like, oh, those are for kids. But as I grow up...
What about your little brothers? What about your little brothers, man? They're in the generation...
My little brothers are clones of me, so.
Yeah, but I mean, are they even in a more accepting environment now, or is it,
yeah, I
do they
guess.
do they get crap? Do you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
they're
actually a good point, because my youngest brother, he's turning 16 this year, I think, and yeah, he didn't really get picked on. I mean, I'm sure he got some crap for it. I don't know everything that ever happened to him in school or anything, but he has insinuated that he's gotten, some negative attention, but also positive attention. He wears a Brony jacket to school every day, and he's gotten more compliments for it than negative. Because I would always ask him, like, is anybody giving you crap for that? And he's like, no. I mean, a couple people were like, hey, cool, man. I mean, most of his friends in his sort of social circle are into the same kind of stuff he is. They're very accepting of stuff, even if they don't like it. Some of them aren't fans of My Little Pony, but they're fine with it. So
I see comments on the online about people who always preface their comments like, I'm not a Brony, but
I appreciate the
video. I appreciate the fandom. I think you guys are cool. Anthony,
if your brother was wearing a G3 My Little Pony jacket, what do you think do
those even exist?
I don't think he'd wear a G3 Pony jacket.
Well, another thing about the whole kid versus adult thing.
G4.
Another issue with the kids versus adults thing is how to relate to the characters, because a lot of people who don't know the show think that all the characters in the show are little kids. But actually, we who watch the show actually realize that the main six,
they're adults. They have shops.
Yeah.
And they are not in high school.
Exactly. Right.
Although I do think they're all 15 or 16 years old.
From my
I will
perspective,
defend that stance.
if I could, I'd just share my perspective is that the characters for me, there's almost sort of this ageless quality to them, where they can be any age. In some scenes, they seem very young. Yeah. But in other contexts, they seem quite old, even 20-something. You've got scenes where Rarity and Twilight and Applejack are having their first sleepover, which is like baby stuff.
Hooray, slumber party!
That's 6-year-old stuff.
Well, it's Twilight's first sleepover.
Yeah, it's Twilight, but they're going through all the rituals and stuff.
The idea is that she's antisocial, so that's why she didn't have.
Yeah, there is that. But I mean, there's other instances.
The main 6 are shunted off to bed like little toddlers.
But then there's other instances where Rarity's trying to hook up at the Grand Galloping Gala. Yeah. She's on the prowl for a husband material.
Yeah.
And and that's a 20-something thing, and she owns her own business.
Yeah.
And all the characters, their parents aren't around. They all seem independent, which is the hallmark of being an adult. Yeah. So
I mean, for me, there's a huge element of disassociation with our society, where they can be, because I completely believe that they're teenagers, but the reason that they act like adults is because they come from a society where they would just grow up quicker. It's such a more accepting society, and a place where you can progress in your life at a much quicker rate, where ponies learn early on what their talent is, and they're working towards that for their whole life, To me, it is very much the ideal of what I wish human development was like. I wish kids grew up the way ponies do, where early on they have a talent that's cultivated, and they're sort of separated from the rest of school, where
Twilight gets to the same thing, and Celestia's personal student.
Right, the whole lesson of that episode is that they were kids, and they figured out their talents, and that's all they've been working towards, I mean, Fluttershy fell out of Cloudsdale. That was where she was going to school, and she just stayed in Ponyville raising animals because she figured out that was her thing, and boom, it clicked. Yeah. And the society that they're in accepts that. So, yeah, they would mature and learn their craft a lot faster in this kind of world, I think. Yeah. And the kind of world where kids leave home to go follow their dreams at a young age, It's like,
there was a guy.
There
was a guy at one of the first BronyCons where they've had the voice actors for the first time, and he made a comment to the voice actors. He's like, I view Twilight Sparkle and Celestia's relationship as sort of a grad student and her professor, and I was like, I mean, you can totally see that,
right? And even though she was a kid, my brother compared it to being a Pokemon master.
Yeah, a lot of Bronies are grad students. We're in that age, so we want to see that. We want to relate to that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people, assume that they're going to be 20 or whatever. But like I said, if you disassociate it from our society, you'll easily see that their society, you could be, at 15, you would be like we are now. It's just a society that moves faster.
It doesn't really even matter how old you picture them, because they're just as far in their lives as we are in ours. So it doesn't really matter if their age is 15. I mean, we don't even know how they age, you know.
Right.
So
Faust
they might
said
be
she never thought about
150.
it. She said, like, to her, they could be anywhere from 13 to 20.
It's again that sort of blank slate, minimalist, unfleshed out nature of the show,
right?
Which allows people to see and relate to.
It, right.
Yeah, it allows people to see and relate to whatever it wants, which has the nice effect of making this community of fans be this cross section of people of all genders, all ages, all walks of life. It's like bringing people together around this who are coming from different places.
Accessible. Yeah.